The Jalen Hurts-Dak Prescott debate is exactly what is wrong with quarterback evaluation nowadays. I'll tell you why coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Wednesday edition of the podcast, and it's brought to you by Mazda. Just like there's more to every player, more dedication, more attention to detail, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Stay tuned later in the episode for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. We are one day away from the Philadelphia Eagles kicking off the 2025 NFL season at Lincoln Financial Field, raising the 2024 Super Bowl banner right in front of their most heated rivalry, their most heated rival in the Dallas Cowboys, who are led by Dak Prescott. And the Eagles did not play Dak Prescott in the 2024 season. Historically, they've struggled against Dak. I think going back to the rookie battles with Prescott and Carson Wentz in 2016, up until, I would say, 2022, the tide was able to turn in the Eagles' favor when they got A.J. Brown and started to become Super Bowl contenders. But before that, like Prescott, and even after, he's always been able to put up good numbers against this team. So I think this will be a competitive football game if Prescott does have success through the air. But like I've said on the show a couple times this week, I think that's the only way that this game is close, is if Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens have a day against the Eagles secondary, which I'm certainly not predicting. I'm nervous about that third cornerback spot of Dory Jackson when he has to go up against CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, but overall, I think Jalen Hurts is going to win this battle tomorrow night to kick off the season. And you know, it's interesting. There has always been a Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott back and forth naturally, as it's been most times the Eagles and Cowboys have a franchise quarterback. For a couple years, it was Dak Prescott versus Carson Wentz. But when you debate Jalen versus Dak, like when I see these conversations going on X, on our YouTube community pages, on, you know, cable networks like Fox and ESPN, whenever you see people defending Dak versus people defending Jalen Hurts, I think it shows like exactly what is wrong with quarterback evaluation is when you have the Hurts-Dak debate. And right now, the debate hasn't really been about Dak because Jalen won a Super Bowl, and it's more been about him versus like the top four in the league. Lamar Jackson in no order, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow. But I do think naturally there is a Prescott-Hurts debate because they're quarterbacks for heated rivals. They're very similar players, at least when they started their careers they were. They come from similar paths as day 2, day 3 picks that were supposed to just be backups to franchise quarterbacks, ended up being the guys themselves. But when you look at, like, again, when people defend Dak, like when I see people say that Prescott clearly is the better quarterback and they list off all of these gaudy numbers, like that exactly is what has irked me about this entire offseason of debating where Jalen Hurts falls in the QB hierarchy. Is he top 3? Is he top 5? Is he more top 7, top 10? Like when you look at why people put him where they do compared to a player of Dak Prescott's caliber, who should, to me, in my opinion, clearly be lower than Jalen. But a lot of analysts put him higher, put Justin Herbert higher, put Jaden Daniels already higher. Or even I've seen people put like CJ Stroud, Baker Mayfield ahead of Jalen. It's because all these people, it feels like sometimes they care about, and I care about it too, but like passing volume, box score stats. Like I, as much as the next guy, want my quarterback to be able to carry this football team by throwing 30 plus times a game, being the reason you win, because elite quarterback play is the main way to be a sustainable contender in the NFL. The entire history of this league in the 21st century shows that to be the case, and even before that as well. So for me, like, yes, I agree that I want my quarterback to be able to carry, but why people think Dak Prescott can carry better than Jalen Hurts, I think is misguided. I think they, again, read just these basic quarterback stats like, oh, Dak Prescott threw for 4,000 yards and for 30 touchdowns. But the issue is, I think Jalen Hurts, and I've said it on the podcast before, Jalen Hurts can carry as well. He can elevate his football team, be the reason you win, just like a lot of these other elite quarterbacks. More, he can elevate his football team, in my opinion, far more than Dak Prescott can. He just does it in a different way. But people say he can't do it. And some of those people say that Dak can, which I think it's the opposite. And it's really just for the sole reason that Dak does put up crazy volume passing stats in that Dallas offense. But I think, like all numbers, those statistics can lie. And I think they can be extremely inflated like they are with Dak Prescott and the past seasons that he's had. But for some reason, in a lot of people's eyes, like that, those stats seem to take priority over things that I think Jalen does great, that leads to more winning, that leads to winning when it matters most in the postseason, in the NFC Championship, in the Super Bowl, in 2 of the last 3 years. Things like fourth quarter, 1-score game, playoff clutch gene. Like that is one of Jalen Hurts' superpowers that Dak Prescott does not have. And again, in these rankings, that does not enough stock is put into that. The ability to play your best in the biggest moments against the best teams. That is Jalen Hurts. That has not been Dak Prescott throughout his career. I mean, there's a reason he only has, 2 playoff wins? He's been to the divisional round twice. The Cowboys have not been to the NFC Championship with Dak Prescott as their quarterback. In fact, I don't know if you knew this, but Dallas has not been to the NFC Championship since the 1990s. They're the only team in the NFC to not be in the NFC title in the 21st century. I love to throw out that stat. But, again, that is something that should mean more than anything when ranking quarterbacks, is like when push comes to shove, the chips are all down, all pushed to the center of the table, who comes out and wins the hand? It's normally Jalen Hurts. And yes, does he put up the same statistics all the time as Dak Prescott? No. But he did in 2022. He did in 2023. So we know he's done it before. And what also bothers me is when people look at volume stats, and that's why they push Jalen down, they don't consider rushing production. But production is production. Like Jalen Hurts' rushing stats equally help the Eagles as much as Dak Prescott's passing yards help Dallas, if not more. Jalen's rushing ability, that ever since Dak's injury, he's not the same mobile quarterback that he used to be. He used to have the mobility of, maybe not to Jalen's degree, but he was from 2016 to 2021, like he was a very mobile quarterback. He doesn't have that impact, and so therefore, he doesn't have the same positive impact on the running game in Dallas that Jalen has in Philadelphia. He doesn't open things as much up for his running backs. He doesn't make it as easy on his offensive line as Jalen Hurts does. And the guy consistently gets 10 plus rushing touchdowns a year, over 600 rushing yards. And then when we're like laying out these box score stats, people get annoyed when people combine Jalen Hurts' total yardage when debating these players. But you should, because a statue quarterback that can't affect the game in 2 ways, that should be part of the conversation. Like, they are not producing in another area of the game that Jalen Hurts is at a historic elite clip. And it's interesting because for a lot of evaluators, like, they use those rushing numbers, that rushing production, to prop up guys like Lamar Jackson for winning MVP twice. They use the rushing production to justify why Cam Newton was such an elite football player. When you look at Cam Newton's passing numbers, they weren't always amazing. His completion percentage wasn't always great. His quarterback rating, his passing yards weren't always through the roof. And yet, the rushing production was used to prop up Cam. It's been used to prop up Lamar Jackson. But for some reason, it's used as a crutch or in a negative light to Jalen Hurts, to say that he's a limited player. He has to do this to produce at the same level of a Dak Prescott, when I don't think it's close. I think there is a clear gap right now between who Jalen Hurts currently is and who Dak Prescott currently is. Like, yeah, maybe that was the opposite in 2021, but from 2022 up until 2025, I think it's clear Jalen Hurts has been a top 5, top 7 level quarterback, and Dak Prescott's been closer to that 8 to 15 range. It's close. Like, Prescott's a good football player, but again, the things that matter most in quarterback evaluation, in my opinion, don't get highlighted as much when we're having a debate like Hurts versus Prescott. Dak has been consistently a career choker in big football games against really good teams, in 1-score games in the playoffs when it matters most. Like, the Cowboys were the first team ever to lose to a 7 seed in the playoffs 2 years ago when Green Bay went into Jerry World and beat them. So I know that people are kind of one-trick ponies at times when evaluating quarterbacks, and Dak Prescott's put up some sexy stats. But Jalen Hurts, to me, when you're prioritizing, like when you're deciding what to prioritize in a franchise quarterback, I think Jalen checks more boxes than Dak Prescott. And I think he has since 2022. But I'm really excited for these two to square off on Thursday night. They barely do. It always feels like if Dak's playing in the game, Jalen's hurt. If Jalen's playing in the game, Dak's hurt. They did not play against each other last year. We'll see what happens week 1 tomorrow night at Lincoln Financial Field. I want to hear from you guys, though, before week 1 gets going. A listener mailbag coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Mazda. This is Mazda's Moving the Game Forward, brought to you by those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it, because these moments do more than win. They push what's possible. They remind us to go that extra yard, shift into that extra gear, and keep moving the game forward with the Eagles. I mean, you look at push comes to shove all the time. When this team's backed into a corner, they come through. Just look at that divisional round playoff game last year against the Los Angeles Rams. 3rd down in Eagles territory. Matt Stafford about to win the game and upset the Eagles, send them home, and they're going to get to the NFC Championship. Jalen Carter keeps moving forward, gets Matt Stafford on the ground. The rest is history. The Philadelphia Eagles were Super Bowl champions. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda. Move and be moved. Guys, today's episode of Locked On Eagles, we are also brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The Part Finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail truly does matter. Join the free TradeMaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use our promo code capital SHNFL5. That's, again, capital SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. 2 more shows until the Eagles kick things off against the Dallas Cowboys tomorrow night. I've got this show for you, and then Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys joins me tomorrow for Crossover Thursday. We have our postcast show, our postgame show live after the game Thursday night too, so make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms where you get the show in audio form, and then make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. So I did want to hear from you guys, the listeners, before this game. You guys have heard me talk to death about this matchup and about this season for, 6 months now, right? It's been just me riding solo for 5 days a week since January. So haven't done a mailbag episode in a while. Wanted to hear from you guys, the listeners. What's on your mind before this game? And you can always hit me up too after the show as well on X, it's at LockedOnBirds and at DiBiase-LOE. You can always ask a question as well on our YouTube community page. So that's why, again, you want to make sure you subscribe to that Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. I want to start with a really deep question that I got. One of my good friends, Sam Mecca, writes in, tell me a new reason to be excited about this team's journey, a new thing to cheer for that isn't something we've already experienced with the Philadelphia Eagles. So I actually really like this question. Obviously, this team has already won championships, right? You've won 2 Super Bowls in the last 8 years. You've beaten 2 of the greatest players in the history of the NFL in different ways. You beat Tom Brady in 2017 in one of the closest, most entertaining shootouts in Super Bowl history. And then you stopped history by beating Patrick Mahomes in a blowout last year, stopping the Chiefs, stopping Mahomes from potentially becoming the greatest player of all time and doing something the NFL has never seen, which is being a 3-peat, 3-in-a-row Super Bowl champion. So you've already beat the GOATs in a championship game. You've won with a backup quarterback. You've won with your franchise quarterback now in Jalen Hurts, which you've really never done in franchise history. The Eagles have checked a lot of boxes when it comes to things that you've probably always wanted to see as a football fan, what you wanted to see your team do at a historic level. What can they do this year that's different outside of just continuing to win and be at the standard they've been at since 2021 when Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts took this organization over? I would say for me, it's becoming a dynasty. And I know people hate when I use that word. It's repeating as Super Bowl champions. It's doing something not just historically for your franchise, but in the history of the NFL that you've never done and only a few teams have ever done. Like, only in my lifetime, I have only seen 2 teams ever repeat. And one of them, I was a little kid, so I don't even remember the New England Patriots repeating as Super Bowl champions in 2003 and 2004. I mean, I'm a 6 and 7-year-old kid, barely processing that. And then, of course, we just saw the Kansas City Chiefs do it in 2022 and 2023. So for me, like, something new to cheer for this year to break up the monotony, because, you know, I do think people, I don't want to say people got bored during the Patriots run, but winning almost became an expectation for Patriots fans. And so if they did it, you didn't really have the same thrill as before, but losing would be a complete catastrophe. So it was almost like a miserable existence. And I don't want to say that for a team that won 6 championships in a single fan base's, like, you know, teenage and 20s, like somebody growing up as a Patriots fan in the 21st century, all they knew was 6 Lombardis and winning Super Bowls and competing every year. But again, like, eventually you become almost, that becomes your new normal, like Doug Peterson said back in 2017. So I do imagine the thrill goes away a little bit. But it doesn't, I think, if you're achieving new things, like you're climbing new mountaintops. Like, the Eagles have never come close to being a dynasty. They've never come close to repeating as Super Bowl champions, although I believe in 2018 they could have made it back to the NFC title and maybe won that, but they've never been serious juggernauts year after year where they've already been an established champion. Even the early 2000s teams, like, yeah, they made it to 4 straight NFC titles, but they never got it done, so that's different. This year's team has the ability to do something that the Eagles have never done and that only a couple teams in NFL history have ever done. It's repeat as champions and become a dynasty. Like, there's not a lot of dynasties in sports for a reason. It's very hard to do. You would be in very rare territory, like in a very elite tier of teams, not just in the history of the NFL, but the history of sports. If you can do that this year, and again, just maintain that kind of consistency over a long period of time. The Eagles were not able to do that after 2017. They made the wild card round, the divisional round a couple years in a row, and then everything collapsed on their head. So can they sustain that success? Can they do something that we have never, no Eagles fan has ever experienced, whether young or old, that only a few NFL fan bases have experienced in the last 30 to 50 years? That's something that I'm rooting for. Like, I want to see that. I want to see this team build an all-time legacy. I also think what I want to root for is, like, Jalen Hurts' legacy. I want to see these individual players become all-time greats, guys that we grew up, like, we watch grow up through this organization, from a limited player in 2021 that was a good runner, but people had long-term question marks, to potentially like an all-time great. That's something really cool to see Saquon Barkley break history last year. Maybe now he's on the verge of becoming one of the greatest running backs of all time, watching a Hall of Fame career in the making. Jalen Carter, could he become the next, Aaron Donald? I'm getting off on a giant rant here, but like, those are some things that keep things fresh, rooting for this football team. Outside of just, we love this football team and we love this sport, and I don't think it would get old watching them win titles and compete every single year, every single week. But that's a really interesting question. Again, for me, though, the main thing is I want to see this team try to become a dynasty. I think they have the opportunity to do it. I've never seen a football team in Philadelphia set up this way for the long term, so it really excites me. One of our long-term listeners writes in a question here, Rach Groski. What non-obvious player will have a breakout year in 2025? And I want to do this in a different way, since I've kind of hit on a lot of breakout players already throughout the summer, guys like Moro Ijoma and Jalix Hunt. I'm going to do... Here, let me do it this way. I think there's a guy we're going to say at the end of the year, man, if he was on a different team, he would have a breakout year. Like, this is a player almost held back by his situation. He's a lot better than the role he has in Philadelphia just because of who's in front of him. And I think that's going to be Will Shipley. Because Saquon Barkley's in front of him, this is not going to be a running back by committee approach. You're not going to see Will Shipley get a lot of touches this year. Even though I think he can also catch the football, You're just not going to see him have a massive role in the offense. I think it's going to be bigger than last year, but you also have A.J. Dillon in that backfield. He's going to maybe steal some touches when Saquon's on the sidelines. But I think you will say, because when he is out there, he's going to flash on offense and on special teams. He already did this year in the preseason. He did last year. I mean, look at that NFC Championship game. He had a big run. He had a rushing touchdown, a forced fumble in kickoff coverage. Like, he's a good returner as well. I think he's almost going to be kind of like a poor man's version of when Darren Sproles was with the San Diego Chargers, but he was behind LaDainian Tomlinson. So he still didn't have a massive role, but everybody knew, like, Sproles is kind of the Chargers' secret weapon. Then he went on to New Orleans and he became a stud. Then he was a stud in Philadelphia as well. He blocked me on Twitter, but I still think the world of Darren Sproles. I think that could be like the poor man's version of Darren Sproles is Will Shipley, where you could say if he was in a committee backfield, if he was with another football team, he would be a really good football player. Like, I think Shipley's going to have, I think he's going to just, like, maybe not statistically, but efficiency, like when he is on the field, you're going to see a big difference in year 2 compared to year 1. And then let's get to one more question here from D on X at Too Easy for Easy. If Keely Ringo or Jacorian Bennett don't pan out, do you think Howie Roseman spends at least a day 2 pick on a corner in 2026? Man, we're already talking about the 2026 NFL draft, and week 1 hasn't even happened. But that is why I love this podcast and love the listeners, because you guys are sickos just like me. I have thought this exact same thing, and I would say yes, most likely. I think if it doesn't work out this year with Bennett and Ringo, what they'll do next year at the third cornerback spot will be more sizable. It'll be a more sizable investment than what they did this year in CB3. Like, I think the free agent they signed would be a much more expensive player than like Adoree Jackson this year. And also maybe maybe they do spend a second or third round pick on a corner. But I still don't think, because you have Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, you have 2 elite corners already in the secondary. I don't think suddenly they're going to spend like a first round pick on a corner. They're going to throw a massive contract at somebody. I think there's a middle ground, if it doesn't work, between that, what they invested in like Quinyon and Cooper and back-to-back picks in the first and second round in 2024, and then what they did this offseason, which is let Darius Slay and Isaiah Rodgers walk, and they brought in Adoree Jackson and Jacorian Bennett. I think this year they probably would spend a later day 2 pick on a player and probably spend a little bit more in free agency. But I don't think it'll be a top priority still, because they also need to address the right tackle spot long-term. Lane Johnson has already hinted that maybe even if they win it again this year, he might ride off into the sunset and retire. You probably will need another edge rusher in 2026. You might, depending on what we get with Drew Makuba and Sidney Brown, and Reed Blankenship's a free agent next year. Maybe he walks. They might need a safety again next year too. So there's going to be some needs in 2026 that I think trump that third cornerback spot. But I do agree with you that, yeah, probably like a sizable investment of like a day 2 pick or that kind of free agent contract. I do think that's coming, but interesting questions for sure. All right, guys, coming up next, we'll wrap up this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles, the return of LOE3 presented by FanDuel. We'll be right back. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy Football. The NFL season is one day away, and you can feel the buzz. Fantasy football season is here. Everybody's researching, drafting, and building their championship squads if you haven't already. If you haven't joined a league yet, now's the time, and it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, I'm playing fantasy football on Yahoo Fantasy. I've been doing it for 16 years now, since 2009, and you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran like me creating your millionth league, Yahoo Fantasy is loaded with fun ways to compete, brand new features that make the game even better. Of course, you've got head-to-head leagues. You can join private leagues with your friends, public leagues as well. No crew, no problem. Join a public league. It's the easiest way to play. But Yahoo Fantasy also now has guillotine leagues, where the lowest scoring team every single week gets eliminated until one team is left standing. I love guillotine, although Anthony Richardson last year killed me pretty early in the season. It's an addicting kind of fantasy football. You can play it all at Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season kicks off tomorrow, so don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. FanDuel.com/LockedOnNFL. And guys, speaking of FanDuel, we're also sponsored today by America's #1 sportsbook. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel, especially during the NFL season, because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, which I'm about to do, building a same-game parlay, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team, the Philadelphia Eagles, maybe you're taking the money line, or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. Not just Sundays, though. Thursdays, Fridays this week, we've got college football Saturdays, NFL Sunday, NFL Monday, 5 straight days of football, the best time of year. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, let's do this. The first segment of LOE3 for the 2025 season presented by FanDuel. If you are new to the Locked On Eagles podcast, me and my former co-host, Gino Camilleri, we've been doing this segment since we started the show together in 2018. Each week, we would both have 3 player prop bets for you to ride with for the upcoming Eagles matchup. Since it's just me today, now it is purely LOE3 in its purest definition. 3 player props for Eagles-Cowboys tomorrow. The Eagles are 8.5-point favorites right now, I believe. That was the line. Let me just double check that. So if that's the case, I am taking the Eagles to cover. Let's take a look here. Yep, Eagles minus 8.5. The over-under right now is at 47.5. I would probably take the over as well on that. I think there will be a lot of points scored tomorrow, especially by the Eagles. I think they put up at least 30. Maybe the Cowboys score some garbage time points because the Eagles are going to win this game handily, in my opinion. So I would take the Eagles to cover that 8.5. I would take the over on 47.5. But let's do our LOE3, where our 3 player props are going to win you some cash tomorrow on the FanDuel app. My first bet is going to be about QB1, Jalen Hurts. I am going to take the over on 225 total passing yards, which FanDuel has odds of plus 118 currently on that bet. Jalen Hurts last year rarely surpassed 200 passing yards, but I don't think it's crazy to expect him to do that in the first game. He did it in the first game last year against the Green Bay Packers. He consistently threw for over 200 yards in 2022, in 2023. Dallas's defense does not look scary at all without Micah Parsons there. I mean, what are you scared of on the defensive line, or at least what do you respect? I mean, Dante Fowler is a solid player on the edge. At linebacker, I said it on the show yesterday, I think Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley, if they get lined up on these running backs or on these linebackers downfield in the passing game, they could have a field day for Jalen Hurts. Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown kind of have Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland's number. Those guys are opportunistic. They get interceptions. They both led the league in picks, I think 2 years in a row, but also they give up a lot of yards. They really commit to things that you can get them to bite. And with an elite route runner like Devontae Smith, with just the physical specimen of A.J. Brown, I think Jalen's going to have a lot of success through the air tomorrow. So I'm going to take the over on 225 passing yards, which currently is at plus 118. And then my second bet is going to be a 2-leg parlay for Devontae Smith, which is at plus 287. I'm going to take the over on Devontae Smith's 60 receiving yards, so 60-plus receiving yards, and I'm going to parlay that with a second leg here of Devontae Smith anytime touchdown score. I just felt like in 2024, anytime that I went with a Devontae Smith anytime touchdown, it hit. So that was my most popular and consistent winning bet last year. So I'm going to try to start things hot in 2025 by going back to that same hand. But I'm going to, again, 2-leg that parlay with Devontae Smith, 60-plus receiving yards. That's at plus 287. Devontae Smith has kind of always been the Cowboy killer since 2021. And then I'm going to have a defensive bet for my third and final bet here on LOE3. Jalen Hunt to record a sack at plus 116. I think Jalen Hunt is going to be able to feed off of Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter. I like his matchup on the right side of the defensive line against the Cowboys left tackle. That Dallas offensive line is not what it used to be. Jalen's had a really strong summer. I think he's also really good in cleanup duty as well. Like, he has such a high motor. He's such an explosive, fast player that if the play breaks down, I think Hunt's one of the best players on this defensive line at cleaning things up, like cleanup sacks, like that maybe Jalen Carter creates the pressure or Nolan Smith and Dak has to roll the other way. I'm expecting a sack in this game by Jalen Hurts. So those are my 3 bets presented by FanDuel this Thursday night, Eagles-Cowboys. Jalen Hurts, anytime sack at plus 116. Devontae Smith, a 2-leg parlay of over 60 receiving yards and an anytime touchdown, which is at plus 287. And then Jalen Hurts, the over at 225 passing yards, which is at plus 118. You can bet at FanDuel as well. Download the app tomorrow. Eagles-Cowboys. Eagles 8.5-point favorites, and the over-under is at 47.5. Take the Eagles to cover and hammer that over. All right, guys, tomorrow, crossover Thursday with Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Until then, as always, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.